You have a type. You know you do. It's that specific combination of charm and emotional unavailability, of warmth and sudden distance that hooks you before you fully understand what is happening. And every single time, without fail, it ends the same way. Yet somehow, somewhere down the line, you find yourself drawn to someone who feels almost identical. Different face, different name, same story. So why does this keep happening? The answer isn't weakness. It isn't stupidity. It isn't bad luck. The real answer is far stranger than any of those, and it lives buried in your nervous system, coded there long before you ever went on a first date, long before you had words for what love even was. Your brain does not fall in love randomly. It follows a map. That map was drawn in the earliest years of your life, before you had language, before you understood cause and effect, before you could make any conscious choices about any of it. The people who raised you, the way they held you, ignored you, soothed you, misread you, frightened you, or made you feel completely seen, all of it carved grooves into your neural architecture that would later determine, with striking precision, exactly what kind of person makes you feel something real. Psychologist John Bowlby first described this in 1969, calling it attachment theory. His research showed that the emotional bonds a child forms with their earliest caregivers become the internal blueprint for every close relationship that follows. You don't choose the blueprint consciously. You don't even know it exists. It simply runs in the background, invisible and powerful, quietly selecting for what feels right. There's a term for what that blueprint produces. Psychologists call it your relational template. It's an unconscious set of expectations about how safe love is supposed to feel, about how much closeness is normal before it starts to feel threatening, about whether trust is something that grows steadily or something that always eventually disappears. And here is where it gets genuinely strange. The brain doesn't just absorb this template. It treats it as normal. It treats it as home, even when home was painful, especially when home was painful. Researcher Mary Ainsworth built on Bowlby's work in the late 1970s through a now famous experiment called the Strange Situation Study. She placed young children in a room with their primary caregiver, then had a stranger enter, and then had the caregiver leave. What she found was that children responded in dramatically different ways. Some remained calm and confident, easily soothed when the caregiver returned. Others became frantic, clinging desperately, inconsolable even after the caregiver came back. Others shut down entirely, going quiet and flat, pretending they didn't need anyone at all. These were not random personality quirks. They were survival strategies, shaped by what the child had already learned to expect from the people they depended on most. And what Ainsworth discovered, confirmed by decades of follow-up research, is that those same strategies reappear in adulthood, in the way you respond to silence from someone you're dating, in who you find magnetic and who you find suffocating, in who you can't stop thinking about and who you never manage to feel anything for. By the time you are old enough to be in a relationship, you've long forgotten where the pattern came from. You just know what pulls you in. And what pulls you in isn't always what's good for you. It's what's familiar. And familiar feels like recognition. It feels like depth. It can even feel like destiny. Here is the counterintuitive truth that changes everything you think you know about attraction. Your nervous system does not experience healthy the way your conscious mind does. To your nervous system, healthy can feel boring, stable can feel flat. Someone who is consistently warm, reliably present, straightforwardly interested in you, that can actually register as dull. Not because they are dull, but because your nervous system is scanning for a pattern it already knows, and what it knows might be unpredictability, warmth that appears and disappears, the particular electric tension of never being quite sure where you stand. Someone who runs hot and cold triggers your earliest wiring. The part of you that learned, a long time ago, to work for love, to earn it, to stay on alert, watching carefully for any sign it might be withdrawn. And your brain rewards that vigilance. Every moment of warmth from someone who usually pulls away floods your system with dopamine, not because you have found something genuinely wonderful, but because you briefly won something that kept slipping away. The reward feels bigger precisely because the uncertainty made it feel scarce. That is not love. That is the architecture of craving. Neuroscientist Helen Fisher spent years scanning the brains of people who described themselves as intensely drawn to complicated, inconsistent partners. What she found looked almost identical to the brain scans of people in active substance addiction. The same dopamine reward pathways lit up, the same craving circuits activated when contact was removed. The same withdrawal-like responses appeared during periods of silence or distance. You are not being irrational when you cannot let go of someone who keeps disappointing you. Your brain has been trained to need the hit, and every unpredictable moment of closeness delivers it. But here is what makes it stranger still. You often don't choose the wrong person once. You choose a version of them again and again, across years and across relationships. Different life, different face, same emotional signature, same push and pull, same specific moment a few months in where you feel the floor shift beneath you. Because your relational template never stops running, it scans every room you walk into, cataloging people for emotional resonance. When it finds a match, when someone produces that particular combination of charge and uncertainty, it registers them as important before you have consciously decided anything about them at all. This is what researchers call repetition compulsion. Sigmund Freud was the first to name it systematically, observing that people unconsciously reenact painful relational patterns, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the deeper mind is trying to complete something left unfinished. To go back to the original emotional situation and, this time, win. To finally get the withdrawing parent to stay warm. To finally receive the love that kept hovering just out of reach. The wrong person is not a failure of your judgment. They are an invitation from your unconscious to finish something that was never resolved. Now here's the part that requires honesty. Think about the people you wrote off as lacking spark. The ones who felt too available, too consistent, too easy. What if the spark was never really about them? What if what you have been calling chemistry is simply the anxiety of not knowing whether you are going to be chosen? What if you have been confusing the relief of finally being wanted by someone uncertain with the actual felt experience of love? That is not a small distinction. It rewrites the entire story you've been telling yourself about what real attraction is supposed to feel like. There is a way through this. Researchers who study attachment patterns consistently find that the template is not fixed. Neural grooves are not permanent cages. When you become conscious of the pattern, when you can feel the pull and recognize it as familiar rather than labeling it immediately as love, you create a small but crucial gap between the impulse and the choice. You can feel the electricity of someone who mirrors everything you have chased before, and you can name it clearly. This is an old signal, not a compass pointing somewhere new. Just the old map activating again. Some people build that awareness in therapy. Others do it through slow, deliberate, uncomfortable practice, choosing to stay present with people who feel too steady, learning to sit with safety long enough for the nervous system to stop interpreting it as absence of feeling. It is not fast, it is not dramatic, but it changes the architecture over time. This matters because every time you follow the old map, you quietly confirm a belief you might not even know you carry, that this is simply how you love. That struggle is proof of depth. That anxiety is what genuine feeling looks like. None of that is true, but your nervous system will go on believing it until you give it something new to learn. You have a type. You've always had a type. But that type was never really about the other person. It was always about the map you've been carrying, drawn in a room you can barely remember, by hands that were doing the best they could with what they had. The question was never really why you always fall for the wrong person. The question is whether you're ready to stop letting a map that old decide where you go next.